For this video, I'm basically going to do what's called a think aloud. I'm going to work through this proof as the way that I would do it, of course, in the mind of a student. And I'm going to talk through every step and everything that goes through my mind as I'm filling in the blanks of this proof. Now, before I start, let's talk about the main things that you need to know about these two-column proofs, because I've seen some struggling with this. And that is the idea of what goes in for statements and what goes in for reasons. Alright, so statements, these are where you put your congruent statements and the things that you know to be true and the things that are given. Alright, so everything on this side is always going to be something that's given or a congruent statement, pretty much. If you can keep that in mind, that should hopefully help you with some of the problems that you've been having with not knowing what goes where. On the other side is the reasons. Okay, now, for every single statement that we give, we have to give a reason for why it is true. Sometimes they're going to give you a reason for why it is true, and you have to go backwards and think about, well, if you're telling me that's the reason, then what has to be true? So, I'm going to go through this think aloud, and I want you to follow along, and you're going to have some questions to answer as I go through. You've already had a few questions at this point, so I'm going to start now. Alright, so here's my proof. Given angle B is congruent to angle E, and BE bisects AD, and I have to prove that angle A is congruent to angle D. Alright, let me look at my proof. I got my statements, so I got 2 blanks under my statements, and I got 3 blanks under my reasons. So, let's go back to the given. I need to make sure I mark these on the triangle. So I know angle B is congruent to angle E. And I know that BE bisects AD. Well, if BE is bisecting AD, so here's AD, I know that it's getting cut in half. So that means that the 2 pieces of it have to be congruent. So let me go ahead and mark those. Oh, let's see, what else do I know? Well, I've got vertical angles here. I got these 2 things. They have to be congruent. Well, that means that the 2 triangles are congruent by angle, side. That's probably going to come into play at some point. So let me put a little note on that. Angle, side. And they want me to say angle A is congruent to angle D. I'm going to just kind of circle that. Alright, so I got my given. Angle B is congruent to angle E. And then my next statement is BE bisects AD. Well, I look up here and I see, okay, that's one of my givens. So, well, that one's easy. My reason is given. Alright, this next one. Definition of bisect. Okay, so the question I have to ask myself is, what do I know about bisecting? I know that bisecting is where something was cut in half. So, what can I get from that? What did I know was congruent by using the definition of bisect? Well, I used the definition of bisect with my given, and so I was able to figure out that AC was congruent to CD, so that must be my statement. So that's what I figured out from using the definition of the word bisect, so that has to be it. So AC is congruent to DC. Alright, my next reason is that vertical angles are congruent, so that means that my statement has to be a pair of vertical angles. Well, I already have determined I got some vertical angles congruent, so let's just name those. That's angle BCA. So angle BCA is congruent to angle ECD. Okay, my next statement is a reason. So the statement they're telling me is triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DCE. Now I know that when I'm proving triangles congruent, I gotta use a postulate. Side, 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 angle, side, whatever. I already figured this one out. I noted it at the beginning, so that must be angle, angle, side. Now, they asked me to prove angle A is congruent to angle D. Well, if I know that the two triangles are congruent, then I know that since angle A and angle D are corresponding, they have to be congruent. Oh, I gotta use that term that we learned in class. Was it all those letters? It's corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That's CPCTC. So that's what we use after we've proved that two triangles are congruent. That's how we can say that any other pieces of the triangle, corresponding pieces, have to be congruent. Alright, so I have finished in my proof. Alright, so that is kind of the thought process that you should be going through every time that you do a fill-in-the-blank proof. You need to be asking yourselves those questions about, how do I know this statement is true? Or, what did I figure out was congruent based on that reason?